Hi everyone, welcome to another update from the Server Runtime seg. So this week I continue the series What Can You Do with Server Runtime Part 2. Now everything I'm going to show you today is both applicable to Server Runtime as well as remote development. So today I'm going to talk about Workception. So what is that? So that's really about running isolated containers using Sysbox. So I'm using Sysbox for isolation, but this can be extended to use any sort of isolation mechanism like Kata containers, Firecracker, etc. So what this lets you do is provide isolation, allowing you to run insecure workloads such as Docker and Kubernetes within a workspace itself. So the use cases for this is really, for example, you want to be able to run Docker containers within your workspace or build Docker containers within the workspace. You want to be able to run services within Kubernetes in the workspace to test out how they would feel in Kubernetes. So for example, you may want to do this for Kubernetes controller operator development. You may even want to do this to bootstrap our own development of GitLab agent for Kubernetes. In addition, this mechanism really helps us isolate workspaces, so there's no relationship between the container running the host user and the user running the container. So we can run the container as root, but that doesn't map to any corresponding host user. So what I'm going to show you in the demo is our workspace running in Kubernetes, which it does using GitLab agent for Kubernetes, but that then running another Kubernetes cluster within it using K3s, and then using running another container Nginx on top of Kubernetes. So I start my journey from a repository as usual. So I've got a repository here with a dev file. I'm going to go ahead and create a workspace. I'm going to select the main branch, but this time I'm not going to select any IDE. I've already put an IDE in this in the Docker container because Docker container is running systemd, and I didn't want to. I needed to run the IDE as a part of systemd as well. So I'm going to go ahead and create this workspace. And so the workspace at the moment is not started. It should soon become running. And it's starting up. In the meanwhile, I'll just show you what lets this workspace actually use Sysbox. So if I go and check my config for the agent, you can see this use Sysbox is set to true, and that ensures that all the correct Sysbox parameters like the runtime class, etc., get set for every workspace that gets created. So I'm just waiting for the workspace to come up. So the workspace is running now, so I can go ahead and open up the workspace. I can sign into it as I do usually. So my ID started here. I can go ahead and navigate to my repository. So in home workspaces and Workception demo. And now you can see that I have a number of files in this repository, including a Docker file and a main.go file, which actually starts a web server running on port 8080. So what I'm going to do is start up a new terminal, and I'm going to actually compile this so I can start building my container. So I'm going to say go build, make sure cgo is enabled. And that builds my application. Now I can run this application straight away and check it out. But what I want to do is actually build a Docker container. So I'm going to say Docker build, give it a tag, and say build. And that starts up the Docker daemon. It actually starts building the container. And so just using an Alpine image to build a simple container here. I can actually go ahead and actually run this container now. So I can say Docker run, I can map the ports. And I just run this test container, and that's running now. So I can actually visit that URL. So I can open that up, put the port number, and you can see the Hello World app is running. So this is my workspace, which is running a Docker container, which is running my application. So that's Docker. I could also, if I wanted, I've got a Docker compose file here as well, running my application as well as Redis. So I could actually start that up as well. So all I need to say is Docker compose up, and in my workspace, I now have Docker compose, which is pulling down Redis. I have an application running with Redis installed. So that's really useful for developers who use Docker compose for their development process. Okay. The next thing I want to show you is that you could also install Kubernetes, and because I'm running as root in this container, I can actually go ahead and install things as well. So I'm going to go ahead to k3s.io, which installs a lightweight version of Kubernetes, and go ahead and run this in my workspace to actually start installing Kubernetes. So Kubernetes is now installed. I can actually say kubectl get pods to actually see whether there are any pods running in my cluster. So this is a Kubernetes cluster running in my workspace. So I can actually go ahead and run nginx. So I've got a pod definition here, which is just a simple nginx pod. So I can actually do kubectl apply and run this pod. So this is now going to start running nginx in my Kubernetes cluster in my workspace. So just wait for a few seconds for it to come up, and it's running now. I can actually port forward this as well. And that should go ahead and port forward nginx. So if I go here and I refresh, you can see it says welcome to nginx. I've got nginx running in Kubernetes in a container in my workspace, which is also running in Kubernetes. So the last thing I want to show you is Workception. So a workspace running in Docker, running in Kubernetes, running in my workspace, running in Kubernetes. So I'm going to just go ahead and run this Vim container that I have. And that should download an image with TTYD and Vim. And there you go, it's running now. So I can go ahead and actually refresh this. And now you can see I have VI running in my repository. So basically I have VI running in my workspace, which is a VS Code container running in Kubernetes. So that's Workception. Thank you for listening.